Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Kahn from the IoT Consortium, and welcome to the kickoff of our Smart Cities webinar, Smart Cities webinar series. That is a 5-part series beginning today on the business and ethics of building smart cities. I'm thrilled to be joined today by 2 exceptional speakers, Lalit Kalani and Jim Hunter from Comcast Machine Q and Delos, respectively. A little bit about the format of these sessions. The webinar series will take place over a 5-week period, so from today until the first week of May. Each of the sessions will be recorded and housed on our website afterward. So if you want to ask questions or want to share it with your colleagues, feel free to do so. They'll be able to access it afterwards. We will be taking questions. If you want to type in your questions, we'll try to address as many as we can during the session. Type in your questions, and after the first presentation, we'll take a few, and then after the second, we'll take several more, and then we'll close the session right before 1 o'clock Eastern time. I'm thrilled that you all can join us. For those of you that aren't familiar with the IoT Consortium, we are the leading business development association for 5 areas of IoT, including smart cities, connected homes, autonomous vehicles, wearables, and retail transformation. Our next members meeting will take place May 13th, the day prior to IoT World in Santa Clara. So if you're interested in more information on the consortium itself, please contact us afterward. We'd be happy to share. But without further ado, I want to get into the Smart Cities session today. And this has been an evolution of many sessions that we've held over the previous 3 years. The last one being at the Consumer Electronics Show, where we brought together city leaders, corporate executives, and entrepreneurs to talk about how to build the ecosystem of smart cities. This is, as I mentioned, the first of 5 webinars, and the remaining 4 are going to be around citizen engagement, energy usage and utility innovation, the sharing economy and emerging forms of urban mobility, and setting metrics for success in smart cities. Today's session, as I mentioned, relates to smart buildings, and it could be argued that no industry will define the future of smart cities and municipal economic development more than that of real estate development. IoT tech is enabling developers to construct buildings that better embody the priorities of property owners and managers. While most modern metropolitan buildings feature some form of digital intelligence, such as HVAC, lighting, or fire safety, those widely known features only scratch the surface of what is possible in this industry. By 2020, the IoT-enabled smart building market in North America is projected to reach $44.8 billion in revenue. This webinar will seek to address the enormous opportunity that IoT tech has to transform real estate development and impacts commercial and residential markets. I'd like to first introduce our initial speaker today, Lalit Kalani, who is coming from Comcast Machine Q. And Lalit, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the intro, and happy to be here. And thanks for all our attendees for joining. Is my screen up? Just confirming if my screen's up. Great. So, I'm happy to be here. Just by way of introduction, my name is Lalit Kalani. I'm on Machine Q's sales and business development team, and in addition to managing the smart building vertical for us, I also manage some of our channel and indirect partnerships. So happy to answer questions regarding that as well. Machine Q is a fully owned business of Comcast, and we are the enterprise IoT arm of Comcast. So it was something that started 3 years ago. It's something that was incubated within Comcast itself, and we've now grown significantly to be our own business unit within Comcast. We are focused primarily on the B2B market. So of course, Comcast in general has Xfinity Home that deals with the consumer and home products. We look at, when we think of B2B and enterprise, within the building space, think about multi-dwelling units and office spaces, facility management, etc. What Machine Q brings to the table is a fully integrated solution of hardware and software And we bring hardware when it comes to LoRaWAN-based gateways, along with connectivity and network management tools and software to bring to the table here. This is a full-fledged IoT platform that can help enable people to build solutions on this platform using LoRa, and I'll get into that in a bit. But also, if you're an end user, we have software and tools to help bring a full IoT solution to you. So how do we do it? MachineQ is currently fully focused on LoRa as our RF technology, and LoRa is an open source globally used open standard system of connectivity, and there's certainly some great benefits of using LoRa, especially as a wireless technology. Some of the key benefits of LoRa are it is low cost when it comes to lower cost of connectivity, lower cost of building sensors and modules. So it's certainly very beneficial there. LoRa essentially stands for long range, and therefore range is something that LoRa is great for. So outdoor range, anywhere from 1 to 10 miles. In fact, we have a gateway on top of the Comcast Center that goes across for 30 miles, but certainly great for outdoor use cases. But really, for our presentation today, LoRa is also incredibly useful for deep indoor coverage. And when I say deep, I typically call out one of these LoRa gateways can typically cover 4 to 6 floors of a building. So it's great at going through concrete and steel, and certainly has many more benefits over some of the other wireless protocols we see today. Certainly for low power usage, so LoRa uses low data rates, and therefore it's very efficient with its power usage. And so you can think about deploying wireless sensors that battery life can last anywhere from 3 to 5 years if done correctly, and therefore you don't have to change batteries often, lowering your overall total cost of ownership there. Some of the other things, it's highly scalable, it's secure, and of course it has a global ecosystem. So you have 80 plus carriers globally utilizing LoRaWAN as their source of RF technology or wireless connectivity. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it's great for transmitting small bits of data. Something to call out, certainly if you're looking for cameras, videos, photos, it's certainly not the best fit for that. But if you're looking to send, hey, yes, here's the temperature, here's humidity, and we'll get into some of the use cases there, but certainly great for small bits of data. What we've done over the last couple of years is we've hosted and we've had customers build a whole host of solutions based on LoRa using MachineQ. So across multiple verticals, today we'll dive deeper into smart building, but certainly agriculture, facilities management, industrials, and smart manufacturing, as well as smart cities. So there's a whole bunch of use cases here, and certainly a lot of solutions that we bring to the table along with our customers. Diving a little bit more into what are some of the use cases we've seen from a MachineQ standpoint in the smart building verticals. So some of the highlights we see that, especially where LoRa also is a good fit is, starting from the top, room occupancy, especially with the growth of remote working. We see a lot of enterprises that started noticing that a lot of their rooms and office rooms and spaces and conference rooms are being less and less utilized. So this, given that they can have a sense of what their room occupancies are like, they can adjust and create their real estate portfolios accordingly. So that's something we see an increasing use of through occupancy sensors, door open close sensors, etc. Climate monitoring, this includes temperature, humidity, CO2, as well as just volatile particles in the air. So you have use cases from, is the HVAC system working or not? Can you find mold given temp and humidity use cases? When it comes to manufacturing, to understand what the air quality is like around or in the space. So certainly some commonly used use cases there. Energy consumption monitoring is something that is increasingly growing, especially with the growth and awareness of sustainability requirements. So certainly things from understanding what is the energy consumption for certain apartments to certain floors to certain machinery. There's a lot of sub-metering involved there. Boiler system monitoring, a lot of this is more for older boiler systems that have been put in older existing multi-dwelling units or buildings where you want to connect a non-connected or non-smart boiler. You can now, through some devices and solutions that we have, you can start getting that data being wirelessly transmitted to the LoRaWAN gateway and then sent to the cloud to your application. Lighting monitoring, that's pretty obvious to help you understand, how it's being consumed. And then of course the big one is water use activity. So sub-metering becoming a requirement in certain states. So we see a rise in water sub-metering and consumption, as well as leak detection. So around 75% of insurance claims are used for water leak payouts, and certainly so leak detection use cases exist. Everything from smart metering that show you anomalies that there might be a leak to small wireless, hockey puck-like sensors that you can throw in your basement or under your boiler. That if there is a water leak out there and water touches that sensor, you will get a notification so you can take action immediately. Why is this vertical important for us? As Greg mentioned earlier, it is a very big market. Of course, I'm not going to dive too much into this, but certainly, across multi-dwelling units within the U.S., you see there will be multiple classes of buildings. So certainly some of the newer buildings and newer construction has a lot of new technologies already embedded while it's being made. But certainly for existing buildings, a solution like LoRa, where you can immediately put wireless sensors and you don't need as much wiring, you have that whole market where you can address smart building needs within this larger market. So why is all this important for whether you're a building owner, a property manager, or even within construction? At the end of the day, we're all trying to increase our ROI, and simply put, it's you either increase your revenue or you help reduce your operating costs. So certainly having smart buildings and smart data really can help you take actions to address both of those, from helping increasing your operational efficiency with energy consumption, water consumption, to helping improve your tenant satisfaction. Is the HVAC working or not? Are temperatures in rooms or corridors, our common spaces, appropriate? To, of course, increasing safety and health. So is there mold growth or not? You can find that out. Can you lower insurance costs and work with insurance companies that, hey, I put a leak detection system. Can I reduce my insurance premiums in that case? So certainly, a whole host of these solutions can actually have directly linked to positive ROI. One of the examples I wanted to highlight here is we worked with one of the public housing buildings in New York, and this was through one of our clients, Pansofic, who builds a smart building solution on top of Machine Q. And essentially, what they were trying to highlight was is temperature and humidity, are those meeting expectations of the tenants? In certain cases, if not, is the HVAC actually working or not? So they were certainly trying to look for higher tenant satisfaction. In addition to that, they were looking for reducing the maintenance hours of having people going to each one of the buildings to really help reduce that travel time and cost of someone going. So certainly, within a pilot of 3 months, they saw positive ROI and reduction in some of those costs. But really, what helped excite them to use this system was for that one building of 6 stories, which is, think heavy concrete and steel in New York City, one gateway was able to cover the entire building as well as half a city block around it. So you could place hundreds of these sensors across the building with only just one investment in one gateway versus, versus connecting each one of them to Wi-Fi or wiring temperature sensors across the entire building. And that certainly brings us to our next slide, is to what were some of the technology selection criteria for some of the buildings, or at least how we or our customers go to market. So certainly some of the things to address here are the key drivers are, someone's looking for a low cost, easy installation, a solution that's fully managed by a solution provider, less to no maintenance, reliability, security, and scalability. Of course, addressing each one of those using a wireless system helped reduce the total cost of ownership, because you didn't have to wire multiple gateways. You just needed to invest in one piece of hardware. The wireless sensors had long battery life, so that helps reduce your maintenance costs. Because it's less wires and deep indoor coverage, it is easy to install and doesn't take as much time. And of course, security, LoRa itself uses AES 256-bit encryption. And of course, one of these gateways can scale to thousands of sensors within the building as well. So it's not just limited to 10 or 20 sensors per se. So those were some of the key drivers and selection criteria in this use case above. Of course, in the middle of the slide, you see the ecosystem, the LoRa ecosystem essentially coming together. You have Semtech that makes the LoRa chip, Machine Q. We provide that reliable connectivity and LoRaWAN platform for buildings, owners, property managers, as well as our solution providers. Murata that made the module for the sensors, and the LoRa Alliance, which really manages the entire LoRa ecosystem and making the standards open and keeping them very consistent. What was really involved in that use case that I went through earlier was easy to install sensors. You had chipsets and software that were easy to connect with, and of course, very low cost and pre-configured gateways there. And finally, as you think about your solutions, or as you're thinking about solutions that you want to include in your buildings, certainly some of the experiences that customers ask for is something we try to address. Certainly, service should be low cost, and reducing that total cost of ownership with less training or something that's easy, shipped out of the box that can be installed easily. Actionable real-time alerts, which is what building owners and property managers and operators are really looking for, whether that be emails, text, through an application, or even integrated into the existing BMS systems. Of course, building portfolio managers always looking for proven ROI. So certainly, as you're thinking about building a solution, always try and think about what is the ROI to the end user and how you can provide that. And then, of course, highest value services. And I just wanted to call out the two big use cases that we see common within the space that customers, first get attracted to are HVAC system monitoring, which everything comes from, temp humidity monitoring within the buildings, within rooms. Is it actually working? You can see differential in pressure within the HVAC system, and especially existing HVAC systems. And then, of course, environmental monitoring, especially in larger facilities where you might be considered part of CO2 as well as other particles in the air. And finally, just wanted to harp on Machine Q. If you are thinking about a solution, or you're a building owner, or you're a property manager, we have all those steps covered, and we can help you at different steps, whether you're just starting to think about it and develop a solution, or you're actually looking to scale or just get some knowledge. Feel free, of course, to reach out to us, and certainly open to any questions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Lalit, for that really engaging presentation. If you have questions, please type them in the Q&A at the bottom. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we will be recording these sessions, and if you have questions after the fact, you can certainly ask them, and we will get them to Lalit and the Machine Q team. So the first question is coming from Chris Williams. The question, Lalit, is how fully managed is your solution?
Great question, and it really depends on who's asking. So if you're a solution provider trying to build, you have your own sensors or you have your own application layer, we offer essentially the tool for you to go out to market with. So we offer the gateways as well, and easily provisionable gateways that connects to a network management system that you would use to manage across thousands of buildings. If you are an end user, a building owner, or facilities manager coming to us directly, we would provide you the fully integrated solution from the sensors all the way to an application layer, or we can help, or we can bring in the right integrators to help integrate that data into your existing system. So we can cover the full gamut just depending on what your needs are.
Sounds good. And just a quick follow-up to that is that there are many unique applications. So where specifically is the handoff?
The handoff, usually, again, depending on where you are, and where you're trying to integrate it to, is the handoff from our network management layer. The data can be integrated to your existing systems or applications, and the handoff would be the pipe through which that data is sent to you. If you are looking for a fully baked solution, we would give you our own application and send that and hand the full end-to-end over to you to manage.
Very good. Thanks, Lalit. Any other questions for Lalit? Okay, as I mentioned again, please continue to send the questions throughout this session as well as afterward, and we will get them addressed. Really appreciate the presentation, Lalit, and your partnership with the IoT Consortium. I'd now like to turn it over to Jim Hunter from Delos, who's going to talk about health and wellness within smart building management. And Jim, if you're ready, I'll kick it over to you.
Absolutely, Greg. Let's get this. You should see the slides now. Okay. First off, I'd like to thank the Internet of Things Consortium for inviting Delos to speak today. We are in a very unique position in the industry, and I'll talk about that because the industry is one thing, but we're also in a very unique position in our own evolution as human beings. Think about this. We are surrounding ourselves today almost all the time, greater than 90% of our time, inside some sort of a box. What that means is we have four walls and a roof surrounding us. We have tempered and energy efficient glass, and we have an environment that's completely manufactured that we are immersed within. And that's having an effect. So today I'm going to talk to you about the effect, and specifically a very simple use case about sleep and how our environment is affecting our sleep and what effect that can have on us. Why this is important, I'll talk about what Delos does, and I'll talk about our Darwin platform that helps to remediate some of the challenges I'll present in this conversation. But I want to talk to you for a second as an industry expert. I've been in this industry of smart home, connected home, IoT, whatever you want to call it, for a quarter of a century. And it's always been the challenge of what's the value proposition for the people on the other end. Why do they need technology? Why do they need their lives to have this new level of complexity? And the answers have come back year over year is not something that every single person says, oh yeah, that makes sense. we're doing this because it makes my life more convenient. No, I think that what's really interesting when you start to look at the health and the wellness of your family and your friends and the people that you care about is the use case is amazing, because we see the need to be healthy. We know the impact of not being healthy. So as we go through this conversation, that's what we're really going to concentrate on. Feel free to ask questions as we go along, and we'll answer questions at the end as well. So here we go. Let's start with the basic thesis. We spend over 90% of our time indoors. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking. You're like, not me. I'm out and I'm adventuring and I'm going whitewater rafting and skiing. Okay, on average, we spend over 90% of our time indoors. And that's actually not the way it's always been. In fact, it's only been that way for maybe 500 years or less. For the rest of our time as a species on this planet, we've been outdoors. And indeed, that's actually what's programmed us. And we're discovering science. We're discovering these relationships between nature and our own well-being and our own health that we'll talk about now. We'll start by really breaking it down what health is. And it's, as it's described here on the slide, health is the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It's not just not having a disease. It's being balanced and being in the space where you need to be in the physical, mental, and social angles. So when we look at it, we look at it a holistic way. So what drives that? What drives our health as human beings? A few determinants. Genetics is a small part of it. Medical care that we receive is a small part of it. The lifestyle and the health behaviors is a small part of it. But the vast majority, 70%, is based on the social and physical environments that we spend, as you saw before, 90% of our time. Whether we're at work, whether we're at home, whether we're sleeping, wherever we're sleeping, in a hotel, in a home, even at work, right? They've got nap pods now. All of that affects us, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So if we look at the focus specifically around the home, because I think that's important, everybody goes home, everybody can relate to being home. 70% of our time we spend at home. Again, these are on average numbers, but that means that we have the opportunity to do things in places where we find ourselves stationary, where we find ourselves surrounded and immersed inside of a box. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about one very critical recharging part of humanity, the programming of sleep. Inadequate sleep is a problem. And just here in America, it's a problem. More than a third of the folks in this country don't get enough sleep. And that's information from the Centers for Disease Control. 1 in 3 adults don't get enough sleep. It's estimated that insufficient sleep is costly to businesses. Imagine the loss of productivity. You don't have to imagine it. The number's right there on the slide. Almost $500 billion a year lost in productivity. So it's something that employers, people who build buildings and want to hire people into their companies and want to basically get people to be productive for them, care about. That means there's money there to help solve problems. So let's take a use case. Let's consider John. And I wish I could see a show of hands here as we go through this, because especially some of the younger folks on this call can relate to this. I can relate to this. I serve as the Chief Technology Officer for Delos here in Manhattan, and you burn the candle at both ends to really try to change the world like we're doing here. So John, he gets home. We'll start at the end of his day, 6:30. John's lucky, he gets out early. He arrives home and he's completely exhausted. He decides that TV is the way out this time. I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm too tired for it. So he goes back and he sits down, turns on the TV, grabs the laptop or the mobile phone, and he's looking at the screens, and he's sitting on the couch and he's like, okay, I've got all my emails done. I'm going to kick back. Yeah, I'll watch a couple TV shows. Well, he's so tired that he just goes to sleep, wakes up on the couch early in the morning, goes to the bedroom, woken up by this blaring alarm, hits the snooze button again and again and again, gets out of bed, rushes, and the cycle continues. He goes to work at 6 o'clock or he goes to work, and now he is not rested for the next and the next and the next. And this is the work weeks among folks, even in our category. How do we solve this problem today? If a third of the adults in this country aren't getting enough sleep, what are they doing? Well, a lot of them are medicating. 41 billion are spending money on sleeping aids, 41 billion in sleeping aids, and it's expected to jump all the way to 52 by 2020. Sleeping aids include the medication, it includes the monitoring, the health coaches, the sleep studies, the technologies to help you basically learn to sleep like you're supposed to naturally do. And if we look at the advice that you get, it's useless. Go to bed earlier, do less, prioritize more. That's great if you're not trying to, if you have the position to do that, but a lot of us actually have multiple jobs in this country or in this world. There's people that have more and more responsibility. So you can't just say change your schedule to sleep more. It just doesn't work that way. But there are things that can be done that go back to your primal programming. I think everybody in this call probably has heard about blue light, the ill effect of blue light and before you go to bed, the challenges that are there, and the temperature that you sleep in. Think about this. Back 100,000 years, when we were roaming the living in caves, not outside, when the sun goes down, the temperature goes down. When the light goes to an orange hue, the blue light is now no longer coming through the atmosphere. And we naturally shut down. We would sleep, the sun would come up, we would get a little bit of orange in the sunrise, and then the blue light would start coming through because of the angle of the sun. We would wake up, it would start to warm up. That's the way we're programmed. Technologies in our homes don't really give us that today, and the little devices that we're carrying around that emit blue lights are disrupting our sleep cycles. So what can we do about it? We can change the environment. And this is important because we have to think about it from fundamental levels because it's a very important problem. We can change the air quality, right? CO2 builds up in a room when you're sleeping, and CO2 can cause problems in your sleeping patterns. You can bring air movement in to disperse and to dilute the CO2. Simple things. Uncomfortable thermal conditions. It's too hot or it's too cold. All of these problems, technology can help us regulate. Noise. I live in a high rise in Manhattan, and the noise cancellation technology on my Sonos is my best friend. So we use technology to help us live these better lives. And lighting. Again, let's not have those blue lights around. Why is this even a discussion? Why are we even talking about sleep? Because if you don't get enough, there's bad news. 20 times more likely to develop anxiety disorders if you have chronic insomnia. That means you're also 5 times more likely to develop depression and 30% greater risk of a coronary heart disease. This is the real effects of not getting enough sleep, of being chronic insomnia, having that condition. It's a real problem, and we want to help use technology to solve that and many, many more problems. So we can first change our environment, right? Simple things. Transitions between your temperature and transitions between your lighting. As we've said, there's an opportunity for technology to actually solve some of these problems and help us be more well. How? How do we do this? Because this is a case story. This is a one of the many stories that Delos tells when we go out and we work with hotels. We work with building manufacturers. We work with home builder manufacturers like KB Homes or Simmons Homes. We talk about the importance of family and the importance of health. We solve the problem with technology. We have a platform called Darwin. And Darwin is an interesting name. It's a name that basically evokes adaptability. It wasn't Darwin that said this, but it was a scholar of Darwin who said, it's not the strongest species that survives. It's not the smartest species that survives. It's the species that's most able to adapt. And that's really what we're talking about doing, is using technology to help us adapt. So when we could look at Darwin, we're looking at 4 key areas today: air purification, water purification, circadian lighting, and comfort. By affecting these, sleep is one of the many use cases that we can actually make better. Let's look at light. I think light's a very interesting one. I touched on it earlier. I love to ask the question, why is the sky blue? And the answer is, why the sky blue? Because it's not always blue. It's actually blue when the sun is at a certain angle to the earth, and it's orange and red when it's at a different angle, sunrise and sunset. That's the programming I was talking about earlier. That's your circadian rhythm. Think about it. For 100,000 years, we've been programmed by this big ball of fire. And it's actually only been about 10 years since we discovered that our optical system processes that blue light, and it releases chemicals that help us sleep. This is important because we didn't know about it before. But as we do this, as we learn more about doing this, we're able to find out new solutions. So let's talk about how we found this out, how we are building on top of this. We've been working with the Mayo Clinic for several years, working with the Cleveland Clinic, working with major hospitals and doctors around the world, and looking at the very real effect of the environment on the people that are in there, in work cases, in sleep studies, in living space studies overnight. We have a facility that we fund in Rochester, Minnesota called the Well Living Lab. And in there, we do live studies on subjects and observe about 219 different, what we'll call atmospheric data points as they're fluctuated and measured to these subjects. And what we're able to discover is some correlations, and lighting is one of the correlations, and the air quality, and specifically the CO2 when you're sleeping and these type of things. These are very real science-based pieces of information. So let's take into account this circadian lighting and think about the lighting being better and the air being better, that ultimately would lead to a better condition for sleep. And let's look at our use case again. John comes home, and instead of putting himself in front of a TV that's emitting blue light, and in putting himself in front of a device that's emitting blue light, first off, we can automatically adjust the lights where he is to take the blue out. A lot of these LEDs, a lot of these different lighting technologies have blue light in them. And only in the last couple of years have they started to observe circadian, and they started to let you filter that out. Blackout shades can lower it as well when you need to get a darker environment, because as I mentioned, we're programmed that when the sun goes down and it gets colder, that's when we go to sleep. So we program the house like it was a cave. The temperature drops, John gets into bed, and everything would happen naturally. Even the wake up is important. Think about being jolted from wake. There's a lot of new technology that's now being employed, so we can naturally figure out when the right point to wake somebody is, based upon my desired time is 6 a.m., but I can start to measure that the body is coming out of sleep about 5:56. So I can start to automatically open the shades, and I can adjust the lights in the bedroom, kick on the heater, maybe some background noise of nature. And you've got a different situation altogether, a different start to the day, and you're able to break that cycle. And that's important because of the downside if you don't. So why is this important now? Why are we just hearing about this now? Why haven't we been doing this since smart homes existed? Well, the answer is we're discovering things. We're finding new knowledge, new information. Building healthier indoor environments can preserve and enhance the quality of life and human health. And this is from the professor of medicine from the Mayo Clinic, this particular quote. Let's look at healthcare costs, because that's where it really comes down. And this is interesting. I find these numbers actually pretty alarming. $9,990 a person on healthcare for the US. 86% of that is actually spent on patients with one or more chronic conditions, and only $248 a year is spent on preventive medical conditioning before they occur. We can see that lack of sleep. We can see the lack of focus. We can see challenges that would bring not only to the industry we immerse ourselves into, but our own personal health and well-being as being costly, but we're not investing in solving the problem. The good news is we're changing that, because we now have a great presentation, a great argument of using technology to actually improve people's well-being. And let me talk about how we do that. Delos goes to market in a number of ways. The first way, and the very first thing that we did, is we looked around the world and we looked at buildings and said, wow, these buildings, they're being built responsibly. They've got some sort of a standard so that they are good to the environment, they get a good footprint, they're sustainable. How's that done? Well, that's a standard called LEED, L-E-E-D. And a number of buildings, billions actually, of square feet around the world are LEED certified, which means it's responsible. We looked at that and say, well, what about the people inside? What are we doing when we build these big office buildings to make sure the people inside are taken care of? And that's when we come up with the WELL standard. We basically took the entire management team of LEED, the Green Building Council, and we basically formed the organization called WELL, or the standard called WELL, that's managed by an organization called the International Well Building Institute. We'll talk a little more detail about it in a moment, but that was our first foray. Then we said, well, we want real world examples of this. So we started to partner with major hotel chains, from Hyatt to Marriott to Wyndham to MGM. These hotels around the world are starting to put in rooms and floors that have better air quality, less chemicals or no chemicals used for the carpet or the bedding or the sheets when you launder them, or when you deliver a mattress. It's not a big bed of chemicals. It's made with natural components. And what we've been able to do is to show, for example, if you look on this slide, wellness branded hotels. People are paying on a daily rate 15 to 36% premium on these hotels. In Vegas, there's over 1,000 rooms that are what's called Stay Well. Stay Well is a Delos brand, and we basically give people a night of what it's like to breathe clean air, drink clean water from the tap, and just enjoy that much more natural environment. The lighting, it can follow circadian. There's the ability to put blue light into the mirror in the bathroom when you wake up in the morning to get you energized and get you going. We also are working with major builders. And again, there's between a 5 and a 35% premium that these major builders can charge for this additional feature. Because it's great to do something altruistic and help people, but ultimately it comes down to the dollars, right? The dollars are all important. And this shows, and this is actually reflects what we're seeing in the industry. I'll show you the rate of growth that we've got in a moment. But this is what we're seeing actually from a payback from the industry on the revenues. And home buyers are willing to pay for more healthy homes. It depends on the specifics, but we'll talk about this. This is from Dodge Data and Analytics. Home builders and remodelers, 83% are willing to pay more. Home buyers are willing to pay more. Do you want your kids to be healthy? You're happy. If you ask somebody who has a child with an allergy or with asthma, it's a no-brainer. It would be for me. It would be for anybody in this call. You want to take care of your friends, your family, those that you love. And that's the opportunity here with this technology. Most people don't really know if their home is healthy. You don't know if you've got mold until you do. You don't know if you've got pollutants in the air because it's invisible. So some people think they live very healthy lives. Well, in this case, only 33%. But you can see that there's people that know they live unhealthy lives. unhealthy, or they live in unhealthy homes. And that number is actually interesting because the concern is actually pretty high. Are you concerned about the health impact of your factors, moisture and air quality? You can see the numbers here. Again, this is from, I believe this is from House data. You can see the results there on the different pieces that people are actually caring about: cleanliness, water quality, air quality. And that's exactly what drives us, is these components. And that's what's actually spelled out in the WELL standard as well. What irritants? Specifically, we see air quality as being an issue. What is the indoor air irritants that cause the problems? Well, people are familiar with dust mites, sure, and mold, but they're really not sure what's there, again, because they can't see it. They just know that they need to have that information. They know they need to know more, right? They're concerned about it. They don't know the information, so enter the technology to help solve the problem. Let's break it down. 25% of US housing units have some sort of environmental conditions putting the occupants at risk. And those environmental conditions could be elevated levels of lead, radon, contaminants in the air, mold, all of these things. 30 million US housing units have problems. Using technology, we can A, measure to say that there's problems, and B, start to put in remediation for solving those problems. If you look at the buyers, the people that are actually looking, in this case, they're looking to renovate. First-time buyer, 52% of them will renovate to address a health concern. Smart tech, 35%. You can see how the health is actually leading the convenience that smart technology will bring, or even the stigma of smart technology over health for both first-time buyers, repeat buyers, and even long-term owners. So there's a desire there. You just have to inform them, you have to educate them. And it's not just in the homes. We're talking about smart cities here. Homes are part of the smart city, but so are the buildings. This is the WELL standard I was talking about, and the growth of the WELL standard that we have. Currently, we're in 50 countries. We've got companies like Deloitte, Wells Fargo, CBRE, TD Bank, a massive list of companies that are building campuses and buildings, skyscrapers, that are certifying for WELL. 1,600 projects to date, covering almost a third of a billion square feet. And what's interesting, if you look, it's actually doubling. This time last year, we were about half that, and we're trending to be almost 500 million by the end of the year. Because the message is clear. These folks are understanding, builders are understanding, both home builders, hotels. Wyndham is doubling down and saying, we've got X% that we're gonna have WELL certified, stay well certified rooms, stay well rooms by the end of 2020. So people are making moves on this. What do we measure? We measure all kinds of things. I mentioned 219 different parameters. The great thing is it's going up. There's more and more air quality. If you know anything about air quality sensors in the industry, you're seeing a spike in the number of companies producing air sensors. The spike in the number of companies putting air filtration and air remediation into their products. So we're seeing an ecosystem grow around this. Connectivity and products that can actually give us that information so that we can use algorithms to provide better outcomes, to provide better guidance, to provide better interaction in the relationship to help the consumers live better lives, more healthy lives, more well lives. So I'm not going to really go much further into this. I just wanted to put that out there, make you guys aware of what's going on, and really think about the importance of nature. Because nature is there to soothe us. It's there to put us into focus. Sleep is core to that, and it is absolutely fundamental. You saw the numbers, you see the science that's behind this, and we're increasing this every day. We have labs, as I mentioned, at Rochester. We have labs here within the company that work together to turn the science and the research at Mayo into real life algorithms and real life remediation. So it's important to understand that this is an opportunity that is driven by financial drive, not just altruistic reasons. And the industry is rising around it. We're seeing it across everything from the smart communities to the smart cities to individual skyscrapers and buildings to apartments to just all the way back down to the individual family home. It's a trend that's growing, and we've been at it for about 7 years, starting with the WELL standard and just moving this needle to help people live these more healthy lives. So appreciate your participation in watching this webinar. And I do want to put a shameless plug in here. I've been nominated, if you guys can scan that QR code, I was nominated for CXO of the Year for IoT World. So love to get your guys' vote on that. I'll leave that up there, and I'll pitch it back to Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Always good to have a plug for a nominee in our webinar series. Another great presentation. Thank you for joining. Here's a question from an anonymous attendee. And so the question is, how are corporations implementing this technology if there aren't true standards yet? So you're developing the standards, but how are corporations kind of scaling this out?
So let's clarify, there is a true standard called WELL. It's actually in its second version. We have over 3,000 what are called WELL AP certified engineers around the world that will engage with a customer. When somebody says they want to become WELL certified as a building, as a builder, in a structure to do that, then there's a process where they reach out to the International WELL Building Institute. They are then connected to a coach called a WELL AP, expert that knows how to help them move their architecture and move their decisions, even the policies within the company, towards something that promotes a more WELL condition. So it's absolutely a standard. It's absolutely something that's employed. You can, around Manhattan, around New York, around China, around California, you'll find certain buildings have the WELL certification already at different levels, gold, silver, platinum. So it is a WELL is a standard that is proliferating today.
That's helpful. You mentioned same attendee is asking a question about, hotels are sort of leading the way in this area, which is interesting because in many respects they're behind as it relates to smart building technologies. So the question is, why do you think that hotels are leaning in as much to Delos and the wellness platform as they are?
I think because I would say there's probably 3 good reasons. The first reason is because it's a small upfront investment. Let's say it's a CapEx expenditure of maybe $7,000 to take a room, retrofit the room, and bring it up to speed. And then after that, it's a recurring revenue stream of, you saw the numbers, 15 to 30% more premium for every night stay. So there's a definite kind of payback after about 2.5 months. And then from then on, it's just a revenue generator. So it comes down to the money from that perspective. But I think it's also something that's really interesting. When we put it into different hotels, Marriott was one of these great ones. A great story is the owner of that particular chain of Marriott was so happy with the technology that he personally would guide people up to their stay well floor and walk off and get their feedback, because when you walk onto a stay well floor, first off, the air is triple purified, right? We're taking out the impurities, we're measuring it, we're monitoring it, and we're determining the best particular comfort level in that space. We're also doing the same thing with water and all the stuff on there. We're using biophilia. So we use a company partner called Nava as an example that have living walls. So you have these beautiful living walls. I'm looking actually at one right now. These beautiful living walls that are just live growing plants that are irrigated and just live on the wall and bring you back. One really interesting thing about the living wall that we were not aware of until we put it to study, people become more productive just at the office if they can see greenery from their view. If you're looking at just a rooftop with asphalt, and then you look at a rooftop that has a garden, there's a productivity increase just by seeing that bit of nature. And we've actually, all of our studies, all of our science is not only done at Mayo, but it's also peer reviewed throughout the system as well.
Sounds good, Jim. I'm going to put up some greenery behind me for the next session. I want to thank Jim and Lalit for 2 great presentations today. To everyone that attended, just a quick reminder that these sessions will be housed on our website, and you can come join us and meet Jim and Lalit live at our next member meeting, May 13th, in Santa Clara at IoT World. We will be at the same time the next 4 weeks. Next week's session will feature Maddie Callis from MasterCard talking about citizen engagements in smart cities. Look forward to seeing you then. And thanks for being part of the IoT community. Have a great rest of the week, everyone. Cheers.